Despite the loss, the SuperSonics arguably had the best roster in the league. They had the second longest active streak of complete seasons over a 500 record at 11 straight, and they now had a freshly renovated facility to match their world-class reputation across the league. It seemed that the SuperSonics had everything going for them, but the reality was far from it. Despite the nearly new arena and the media exposure, the team ranked near the bottom of the NBA in terms of revenue, and the updated arena was still lackluster by comparison. The NBA's rapid growth was driving constant changes in player salaries and fan expectations, challenges that accurately lacked the revenue and resources to meet. His media group, which had endured a rough stretch in the early 90s, finally returned to profitability by the end of the decade. Ultimately, Ackerley preferred to shift his focus to what he considered a simpler, more profitable business, and decided in 2001 to sell the team to local business tycoon Howard Schultz, the founder of coffeehouse chain Starbucks. After only a few years of ownership, it became increasingly clear that the Key Arena renovation had been far more problematic than originally anticipated. While attendance remained stable, the arena seldom sold out, and the revenue gap between the SuperSonics and the rest of the league continued to widen. Citing heavy losses, Howard Schultz pleaded with the state legislature to fund a new, modern arena, while the new Key Arena was still less than 10 years old. The state and the city failed to make a deal with Schultz, who ultimately threw in the towel, listing the SuperSonics and the WNBA Seattle Storm up for sale, after less than 5 years of ownership. By this point, the team had been operating at a loss for years. Local business leaders showed little interest in resurrecting the financial flailing franchise, and the city and state seemed like they couldn't care less. Citing no local interest, Schultz had no choice but to entertain buyers from across the country, with potential ownership groups from St. Louis, Kansas City, Las Vegas, San Jose, and Anaheim quickly picking up the phone. However, St. Louis and Kansas City had lost their NBA teams under similar circumstances to Seattle. Las Vegas was still taboo for professional sports, and San Jose and Anaheim would likely have legal hurdles to jump through due to existing teams nearby. So, relocation efforts would likely need to be directed towards a new, unproven market. Around the same time, Oklahoma City was given a trial run at hosting an NBA team. After Hurricane Katrina struck New Orleans in 2005, the Hornets were forced to relocate to Oklahoma City during their arena's reconstruction. While there was an emotional component to the team's temporary relocation following a major natural disaster, the city rallied around the Hornets. Business leaders and city officials welcomed the team with open arms, and the fans responded with incredible passion, showing up in strong numbers and fully embracing the team as their own. After 2 years in the city, the Hornets returned to New Orleans, leaving a basketball-sized hole in the city's heart. After having so much success in terms of fan support, Oklahoma City became the frontrunner for a potential SuperSonics relocation. On July 16, 2006, Howard Schultz agreed to sell the SuperSonics to an Oklahoma-based ownership group. The deal was approved later that fall by the remaining NBA owners, under the condition that the new ownership group would, quote, use good faith best efforts to secure a new lease or venue in Seattle for at least 12 months. However, Seattle residents reacted harshly to the move, showing little interest in doing what was necessary to keep the team. In 2006, 74% of Seattle voters passed Initiative 91, a measure that prohibited the use of tax dollars for arena projects in the city unless it could be demonstrated that the city would turn a profit on that investment. This was the nail in the coffin, as an Oklahoma City-based ownership group was not going to put up 100% of the funds to build a new arena in Seattle, or sign a new lease at what was now known as an unprofitable venue in Key Arena. The Oklahoma City group would then propose building a $500 million arena in the Seattle suburb of Renton in an attempt to appease the league, but the state legislature failed to cooperate. The whole situation then became a nightmare, as Seattle's mayor stated that the team's lease at Key Arena could not be broken early, and that the team had to stay until at least 2010. Meanwhile, grassroots organizations kept suing and demanding the city not give a single dime more to the team, as the movement against using tax dollars for privately owned sports teams was gaining momentum. The city council then passed ordinances attempting to prevent the team from leaving or frustrate the new owners enough to sell. Finally, the head of the Oklahoma City ownership group, Clayton Bennett, had had enough, exclaiming to a local columnist that he had purchased the team with the full intention of relocating them to Oklahoma City, a comment which the NBA fined him $250,000 for. After this, Bennett doubled down and went directly to NBA Commissioner David Stern the day after the SuperSonics season opener in 2007 and said he was moving the team to Oklahoma City as soon as legally possible, prompting a response from the city of Seattle's legal counsel that eventually led to a lawsuit arguing the OKC ownership group had broken the good faith best efforts clause and request the team be given to new owners at the decision of the court. Seattle-based Microsoft CEO Steve Ballmer then stepped up and offered to cover half of a $300 million renovation of Key Arena, but the city, despite being in the midst of a lawsuit to prevent the team from leaving, refused to agree to cover the other half, and the state legislature did the same. 3,000 diehard Supersonic fans showed out for a rally in support of the city's efforts in their lawsuit to keep the team. Seattle Mayor Greg Nichols then stated that the lawsuit was the city's last resort, to which the judge did not rule in their favor. The Seattle SuperSonics played their final game at Key Arena on April 13, 2008, in a 99-95 victory over the Dallas Mavericks. The NBA Board of Governors then approved formal relocation plans 5 days later. Despite being allowed to leave, it was announced later that summer that the Oklahoma City ownership group and the city of Seattle had reached a settlement. The OKC group would pay $45 million for prematurely breaking the lease at Key Arena, with an additional $30 million payment required if Seattle did not receive an expansion team by 2014. The OKC group could not use the SuperSonics name, logos, or colors, but would retain team history and records unless Seattle was granted a new team at any point in the future. The conclusion of the lawsuit officially marked the end of the SuperSonics franchise indefinitely.